your inventions are breaking your heart. When the whip cracks and wolf packs have torn you apart.
Will you come see me, darling? Won't you explain?
'Cause there's nothing to cry for and nothing to gain.
And so just remember the simple things instead.
And I'll keep my eye on the simple things instead.
When this big old world has got to your head,
when faith tells your good friends to leave you for dead.
Well, this is not World War you found yourself in.
So raise up your hands now and count yourself in.
so just remember the simple things instead. And I'll keep my eye on the simple things instead. And you don't have to look far to see where you're going. You just need a good heart to keep the blood flowing. When people walk through you and push you off course,
When the great love you dreamed of takes off on your horse.
Well, don't climb a mountain when walking a hill. Just push through the doorway and be as you will.
so just remember the simple things instead. And I'll keep my eye on the simple things instead. So just remember the simple things instead. And I'll keep my eye on the simple things instead. And I'll keep my eye on the simple things instead.
Okay, Bressie's joining us here, but ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Heathers, Paul Walsh, Gavin James, Pat Byrne, Soak, Orla Gartland, James Walsh, and of course the Dublin Gospel Choir. Thanks guys, that was fantastic. Okay, so Bressie's here with us, and we're also now joined by a top-class footballer, Cavan goalkeeper Alan O'Mara. Bressie, you know, you hear charity record and good cause and everything, and, you know, they're not always the best. I think everyone was relieved and surprised. That's brilliant, isn't it? It's really good.
Yeah, like, I mean, making a charity album is the minute you hear it, you're like, oh, God, no, I can't do a charity album. And I think that was the one thing the artists that put their hands up and said they wanted to be involved wrote songs specifically for the record and got the message and the sentiment that we were trying to create. That was the most important thing for me. You know, in terms of the production side of it, they're complete pros. You don't have to work. You just, once the sentiment's there and the songs started coming through my email, I was like, this is going to be strong, you know?
It's super, it's super. Now, the two of you are both here for a reason, because you've both talked about your own issues. Alan, we'll come to you in a second, if that's okay. Bressie, you were about 15 when you first had what we call mental health issues. Was it like panic attacks, anxiety? How would you kind of...
It's hard to explain. It kind of progressed at 15. I mean, obviously at 15, lots of things happen, and you know, they can be passed off as puberty or whatever, but I knew something wasn't right. I mean, I was struggling for breath a lot, and I'd be in my room and I couldn't breathe, and you'd be worried about certain things. I initially thought it was asthma or something, you know, because you're friends with asthma. But it just started progressing, and I knew something wasn't fully right there. I wasn't able to socialise. I used to find different ways home from school so I didn't have to meet anybody, and it kind of started, I suppose, avalanching to a point that I went to a position where I broke my own arm just so I could get into hospital, so I could ask a doctor. I was so frustrated at this point, just, you know, what's wrong with me? And when the GP or the doctor in the hospital turned around and just told me it was puberty, or it's just, you're just a teenager, I left the hospital, I think, at that point, probably purely because I have such a strong family and friends. It could have went another way, you know, and that's how frustrated I was at that point.
When you say it could have went another way?
I mean, I was so low at that point, so frustrated. I had a broken arm. You know, it's hard to hear, but I banged it off a chair in my own room, you know, just to get into hospital, just to find out what was wrong.
Jesus. And did you get some help after that?
I still got the runaround a little, you know. I think even at that point, as far as we've progressed with mental health in this country, when I was 15, we were still stuck very much in...
How long ago was that now, exactly?
5 years ago. And it was, I suppose, with 15, it was about 1995.
Yeah, and even then, like...
Yeah, no, it was. We've come a long way. We really have. There is obviously still a huge stigma in the country that we're trying to... with albums like this and the Cycle Against Suicide, that we're trying to, you know, make a point of. But back then it was...
Alan, you did so much, I think, to break that stigma as well. It was May, you wrote a piece for the Sunday Indo. It also went on the GA website. And I mean, the reaction was just enormous, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, the reaction I got to the piece was incredible. It blew me away, and it's just something that it's still it's quite moving. When I think about it and think of all the like hundreds and hundreds of messages or tweets that came through to me, and I suppose in the aftermath of that, I'd been thinking about what my next step was, and it was something that I was really passionate about. And I wanted to keep banging this drum that you know it's not okay to feel okay, and that's when Cycle Against Suicide approached me, and it took us about a 10-second conversation. I realised this is something I want to get involved in.
I can imagine. Now, you were very, very honest about your own situation. I got the impression from that piece that obviously there were a lot of issues there, but one of your issues, and it was something that I hadn't heard before, and it was, you know, you'd hear reactive depression referred to. Basically, you had been involved with the Cavan under-21 team. You'd had an amazing journey to get to the All-Ireland final in 11, was it?
2011, yeah.
Yeah. And then suddenly, after that, life all seemed a bit dull after the intensity of that. That was kind of what started it for you,
I suppose, I just didn't really handle the defeat well initially, and like there's one picture of myself that's sitting on the ground in Croke Park immediately after the game, and I just
is that the picture?
That's it there, yeah. I mean, I just look a broken man. Like I always see it, and I just look at it and go, like, look at my
that's
face.
The moment the world crashed in on you, basically.
Yeah, and I suppose it was just in the following weeks and months, I didn't handle that well, and I just lost the run of myself, and things started unraveling around me, and I suppose I got called up to the Cavan senior team, and that should have been the highlight of my career, like this massive, you know, that's what you dream of growing up, and it just didn't really, I just wasn't getting the same sense of satisfaction as I was from it.
In fact, you kind of you started thinking that you hated football, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was just over time, and I suppose I sort of, that September of that year, I finished I was working part-time in Croke Park, and I went back to college. And it was just at that point, things just went down to sort of another level for me. Football was just, wasn't enjoying it at all. I was getting no sense of satisfaction from there, and I just found myself day after day, I was just lying in my bed. Couldn't get the motivation to get up and go. And just, I said, the only time I was sort of getting up out of bed was to go out and go drinking. And I suppose that had was going on for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that doesn't help either, really.
No, and that was the first real moment that sticks with me, that I sort of started realising something was going wrong, was when I was out in a nightclub in Dublin, and I was just standing there, and I just started feeling really self-conscious and paranoid, and I felt like everybody was staring at me, and just excused myself and went to the toilet, and I had tears in my eyes, and closed the door and locked it and put down the toilet seat, and I just sat there on the toilet seat for 20 minutes just trying to tell myself not to cry. And that's the first real moment that sticks out to me, as, you know, something's going on here.
Yeah. And then you said in the piece that basically as well, you also thought of taking your own life. There was a particular incident you talked about.
That was sort of the first moment, and it just snowballed from there. And it was December 28, 2011, and I found myself driving home from a challenge game with my college DIT, and I'd stood in goals for the game with tears in my eyes, and I was just looking around saying, I don't want to be here, I'm not enjoying this. And hadn't really slept the night before, I hadn't really been sleeping at all for a while. I'd lost my sleeping pattern, and I was just driving home on the motorway, and your head's sort of spinning at 100 miles an hour, and I'm having this internal conversation. And I've been doing this for weeks, just basically two voices in my head just sort of talking to one another and sort of questioning my existence, you know, what am I here for, why am I doing this? And just sort of, the thought just came out of nowhere, just popped into my head I just saw myself visually just slamming my car into the wall at the motorway. And I said, luckily for me, within 2 or 3 seconds after that, sort of another image popped in, and it's my mum and dad standing at my funeral at our local church, and my mum standing there bawling, crying. And luckily that was my eureka moment. That was enough to zap me out, and I just put the window down and sort of stuck my head out the window, let the fresh air rush in, and I just had to get home.
You see, the thing is, guys, like, Bressie, you were a great rugby player, and you became a rock star. I think most of the women in the country would like to sleep with you. You're not a bad-looking guy. And Alan, you're a sports hero. You seem like a really kind of charismatic guy. You're not bad-looking. None of us are as good-looking as Bressie, but
we've over a bit there.
But in fairness, guys, there are guys out there thinking, like, the two of them, both of you, had thought of doing away with yourselves. There are guys out there thinking, what problems could they have? You know what I mean? You can see how guys would look at you, Bressie, and think, Jesus, your man, like.
With it as well. There's an irrationality to how you're thinking that doesn't make sense to anybody. And one thing about mental health, it doesn't pick its victims. You know, it made no sense to me why I was feeling the way I was. And just to correct you, I never felt suicidal.
Okay.
I was lucky.
I thought you were saying that after the hospital that you would have.
The thing when I came out of hospital, with the support mechanism I had with my parents, have incredible parents, incredible family, incredible friends, to be fair.
Yeah.
And I was in rugby clubs, GA clubs, everything. So I had that support. So there's people who don't have that.
Yeah.
Who don't have that support, and they're in the position I was in, where it's a little bit harder. But overall, you're right. The perception of people like, say, myself and Alan is, why would you feel like that? And that's what happens then, is you get this compounding guilt. You start feeling guilty that you feel that way, and then that kind of makes it worse. You know, people saying to you, snap out of it. That doesn't help. You know, that really doesn't help. And you get the perspective story where people might say, you know, think of, you know, you have a house, you have a roof over your head, you're being fed.
Basically, their children starving in Africa.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you know, what happens then is this deep guilt sets in on top of what you're feeling.
So what should people say if, like, we all know now that we're supposed to talk to our friends and whatever if we're feeling, but the other side of it, if one of your friends comes to you and says, I think I'm depressed, or what should we do?
I think you're best being very frank. People who are very frank with me, and one thing we have to point out, both of us, neither of us are psychologists or psychiatrists, and we're not here to give advice on what to do. We're here to help people take that first step.
Okay.
That is very, very difficult, and me and Alan both spoke about it in the green room, saying that that initial step took months of building up to, and that's the hardest part, because when you make that step, there are so many avenues. Like, I went through CBT, medication, meditation, I did everything, and the one thing that worked for me was...
Did you take medication?
Yeah, Yeah, it didn't quite work for me. Okay. And that's not to say, as I said, it
works for a lot of people.
Yeah. And you'd be very clear and very concise.
What did work for you, Bressie?
Physical fitness. You know, and I think a big thing for me is when I came, same with Alan, I was playing rugby professionally and I retired very quickly through just an onset of injuries. It was like, I suppose, like almost like a taxi man with no car. Like, you weren't able to do your job.
Right.
So I started getting very depressed over that. And this massive physical fitness and challenge was taken out of my life and I wasn't able to do it anymore. So I decided maybe about 3 or 4 years ago that was something I had to reintroduce. But the one thing I'd advise with it, it's one thing using it and going to the gym once or twice a week. There's a great satisfaction I got out was picking a goal that scared me, that really scared me.
Okay.
Something I wasn't very comfortable with and aiming at it. And then what happens with that is you start realising that you control your mind. You know, I did triathlons, I had a massive fear of water, I hated fish, hated everything about water. And I took the option of taking it on and doing it. And when I was doing the first swim, in the middle of it, I started realising I control myself. I control my mind. And that was a very liberating place to be.
Are you all right now, Bressie?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. As I said, I went through 6 or 7 different routes to get to the point. I went through them quite silently. I didn't speak out a lot about it. But I have to be honest, probably the biggest step I took and the biggest lift off my shoulders was coming out publicly, because I was saying to Alan, we spent half our time trying to hide it, and that took up so much energy.
Did you as well, Alan, yeah?
Yeah, I suppose just when I had gotten to the stage where I went public, I just got to the point where I felt like I was living with a big dirty secret, and I'd sort of come through a whole journey. I went through I went to a counsellor.
So the counselling route was
and it was fantastic for me, and I suppose like sort of.
And that was the GPA offered that.
Yeah, it was an intervention from my mum first of all, and we sort of that sort of brought us to the topic.
It's funny, the mothers are involved there. So was your mother kind of unlocked it for you initially, wasn't it? The first thing.
It's sort of. I just remember the night she just sort of came over and she'd been poking at me, and it's this night I got home from my drive, and eventually just comes over and stands over me and says, like, "Are you okay, Alan? Are you feeling a bit depressed?" And that just gave me the opportunity just to say, you know, yes. Like, so I remember lying there, I was like, all these thoughts are running through my head. Like, is it okay that I can say yes? Like, am I even feeling depressed? I was so confused, and eventually I just looked down and sort of looked at my body. I was slumped on the couch and I said, like, look at the stain in me here, and I just coughed with the word yeah. And I suppose that was an immediate lift off my shoulders, and from there, I suppose we sort of discussed a little bit, and that's when counselling came up. Mum was sort of saying, where can you go from here? And a couple of weeks previously, I got an email from the GPA. Just to sort of say, look, there's a 24/7 counselling service. This was an email that was sent to every player. It was just highlighting the facility, and that has planted a seed in my head. And I'd sat there twice previously with the number typed out on my phone, and my legs just started shaking with anxiety. Like, I just couldn't bring myself to press the green button. And just through a bit of encouragement, I eventually got to that stage, and it's the best thing I've ever done.
How are you now?
I'm good, yeah. I said, there still can be ups and downs, but I suppose like there are bad days and there are good days. I suppose you try and enjoy the good days a little bit more, and when there are bad days there, you just try and remind yourself that the good days are going to come back, and it's okay not to feel okay. Like. Yeah,
okay. And like, do you, Alan, have to kind of watch it? Like both of you, would you kind of know if?
Yeah, I through the counselling service that I went through, I'd be a lot more self-aware about myself, and sort of I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about depression in general, and I would sort of recognise symptoms. Like, with me personally, I'd sort of start to get headaches when depression's coming on, and I can sort of my sleep pattern starts messing up, and I struggle to sleep, and so it just affects different people in different ways. But I'd be a lot more self-aware of those now.
Yeah, so you learn a lot about it as you go through it. And with me, one thing I was always told by my family and my friends was I was very competitive, and I was ultra competitive. Anything I tried to do, I threw myself into it. And one of my mates said, "Why don't you approach your mental health like that? Why don't you get competitive with it?" And what happened was I used to wake up at 2 in the morning and I'd feel it coming. I'd feel my neck swelling and my chest getting tight and someone sitting on my chest. And what I started doing then, it could be 2 in the morning, it could be snowing, and I'd put on runners. And I used to go out and run. And I used to do this cycle the whole time. Every time it came on, I'd wake up in the middle of the night. And then after a few months, it stopped coming. I started realising I was beating it and realising I wasn't going to lay down and go, "You're going to control the rest of my life." And after, I'd say, about 2 or 3 months of it, I never got another panic attack at night. It never came. And I started, once again, there's real positive steps you can take.
Yeah, just
it's dealable with, and that's the reality. You know?
Yeah. Listen, I want to talk to Jim Breen for a minute. Jim, you started Cycle for Suicide after you were on Secret Millionaire. It was a huge success this year, wasn't it?
Yeah, Cycle Against Suicide, it was an incredible success, but I think, first of all, thanks so much tonight for allowing us here and allowing that song be played, and you know, the two guys tell their story, because I guess really what Cycle Against Suicide does more than anything else is it gets across the message that it's okay not to feel okay, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help. And in a way, what that does is it sets all of us free from stigma. You know, having Alan and Niall talk the way they've talked tonight encourages other people to be able to tell their stories. And by telling your stories, as Niall said, it is the very first step. You know, you talked about how handsome and gorgeous both of them are. I didn't mention about me, but that's okay. But
you're an older gentleman, but you're holding up okay.
It's the second time I heard that tonight. But I would see them more as butterflies. You know, like our two butterfly Bres and butterfly Alan. And the point is that when you're not feeling well mentally, you feel like a caterpillar, you know, and you feel like that it's just not, you're not yourself. And you don't want to be constantly reminding the butterfly that they used to be a caterpillar. So, like, you don't want to be constantly reminding somebody that they had a problem or that they are battling with a problem. As Alan said, when you got good days, you really want to enjoy them good days. And when you got the bad days, you got to know that, you know, like, they will pass. It will pass.
Okay, good message. Lads, I know that probably, despite everything you said, I know that can't have been easy. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Bressie and Alan. The album Simple Things is out now. Go download it from iTunes or from the Cycle Against Suicide website. Time now to give away the Christmas shopping break and the $5,000 in cash. Is Geraldine Kelly from County Clare on the line?
Yes, Brendan, how are
Geraldine,
you?
have you ever been to Dublin?
I have, yes, yeah.
Well, you're coming there again, and you've got $5,000 for your Christmas shopping as well. Well done, Geraldine. Good night. Okay, thanks to all my guests and to you at home for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.